The silent echo. The quantum arrays aboard the UES Hyperion hummed with their usual monotony as Commander Raven Walsh completed her third lap around the bridge. 12 hours into her shift, the endless sea of stars beyond the reinforced viewport remained as silent as ever. Deep Space Patrol wasn't exactly the assignment she dreamed of at the Academy, but someone had to watch humanity's borders. Commander, Lieutenant Dmitry Volkov called from his station, his voice cutting through the ambient noise. "I'm picking up something unusual on the long-range scanners." Walsh paused mid-stride, turning toward the sensor station. "Define unusual, Lieutenant." It's not following any known pattern, ma'am. The signal's using quantum frequencies we've never seen before." Dimitri's fingers danced across his haptic interface, bringing up a holographic representation of the waveform. Walsh approached, studying the shifting patterns. After 15 years in deep space, she'd learned to trust her gut when something felt off. This definitely felt off. Source: edge of the Carina Nebula, approximately 40 light-years from our position. Dimitri adjusted the display, highlighting a region of space that should have been empty. It's repeating every 17 seconds. Natural phenomenon. Walsh already knew the answer, but protocol demanded she ask. "No, ma'am. Too precise. This is definitely artificial, but it's not matching any known signatures in our database." First Officer James Henderson stepped forward, his weathered face creased with concern. "Could be a trap. We've had reports of pirates using false distress signals in this sector." Walsh nodded, considering. Pirates were always a possibility, but something about this felt different. The signal was too complex, too alien. "Get me a full spectrum analysis and run it through every encryption protocol we have. I want to know what we're dealing with." As the bridge crew worked, Walsh returned to the viewport. The Carina Nebula stretched across the distant horizon, a vast cloud of cosmic dust and newborn stars. Somewhere in that celestial maze, someone or something was calling out. Hours passed as the Hyperion's quantum computers processed the signal. Walsh had just started her fourth cup of synthetic coffee when Dimitri's voice rang out again, this time with an edge of excitement. "Commander, we've managed to partially decode the transmission. It's a distress signal." Walsh set down her cup. "Play it." The bridge speakers crackled to life, filling the room with a series of harmonics unlike anything Walsh had ever heard. Beneath the alien tones, there was something unmistakable. Fear. "The universal translators are struggling," Communications Officer Priya Patel reported, "but I'm getting fragments. They're calling themselves the Sethari. Their colony is under attack." Walsh's grip tightened on her chair. First contact scenarios were supposed to happen through proper diplomatic channels, not desperate pleas for help from the edge of known space. "Can we get a visual?" "Working on it," Priya replied, her fingers flying over her console. "The signal contains embedded data packets. Give me a moment to." The main view screen flickered, resolving into a grainy image that made Walsh's breath catch. The Sethari weren't anything like the theoretical alien life forms she'd studied at the Academy. Their ships were organic-looking, with sweeping lines that seemed to flow like liquid metal. And they were burning. Massive dark shapes loomed in the background, their hulls bristling with weapons. The attackers' ships were angular and predatory, methodically tearing apart the Sethari vessels with practiced precision. "This isn't a raid," Henderson muttered. "This is an extinction event." Walsh watched as another Sethari ship erupted in flames. The distress signal continued its steady pulse, begging for help that wasn't coming. According to every protocol in the book, the Hyperion should maintain its distance. Humanity wasn't ready for first contact, let alone getting involved in an interstellar conflict. But as she watched the systematic destruction unfolding before her, Walsh felt something shift inside her. These weren't just alien signals on a screen anymore. These were people, different from humans, yes, but people nonetheless, facing annihilation while she stood by and watched. "What are our orders, Commander?" Henderson asked quietly. Walsh straightened, her decision already made. Plot a course to the signal's origin. Maximum speed. Ma'am. Henderson's eyebrows shot up. The non-interference protocols will have to be reevaluated. Walsh turned to address the entire bridge. I know what the regulations say. But if we turn our backs now, if we let an entire civilization be wiped out when we could have helped, then we're not the humanity I signed up to represent. She moved to the center of the bridge, her voice carrying to every corner. This isn't about protocols or first contact procedures. This is about doing what's right. And right now, someone out there needs our help. The bridge crew exchanged glances, then turned back to their stations with renewed purpose. The Hyperion's engines hummed to life, building to a resonant crescendo as the massive ship prepared to jump. Signal the rest of the patrol fleet, Walsh ordered. Tell them humanity's about to make a proper introduction. As the stars began to blur around them, Walsh silently hoped she was making the right choice. The Hyperion wasn't a warship, and they were about to dive into a conflict they barely understood. But sometimes, the only way to prove humanity's worth was to stand up for those who couldn't stand alone. The quantum drive engaged, and the Hyperion leaked into the unknown, carrying with it humanity's first response to an alien cry for help. They were never supposed to answer, but Walsh knew that sometimes the most important messages weren't the ones you were meant to hear. They were the ones you couldn't ignore. Breaking protocol. The quantum drive disengaged with a shudder that rippled through the Hyperion's hull. Commander Walsh steadied herself against her chair as the familiar nausea of quantum transition faded. The view screen cleared, revealing a scene far worse than their long-range scans had suggested. The Cetheri colony was massive. A sprawling network of interconnected stations that gleamed like pearls against the nebula's cosmic canvas, or rather, what remained of it. Entire sections were dark, their once pristine surfaces scarred by weapons fire. The attacking vessels, the Nox, according to intercepted communications, moved through the debris field with mechanical precision. Status report, Walsh demanded, her eyes fixed on the destruction before them. 3 Nox capital ships detected, Dimitri reported, his voice tight. Multiple support craft. They're using some kind of energy weapons we've never seen before. Our shields might not. Incoming transmission. Priya cut in. It's from one of the Cetheri stations. The view screen shifted, and Walsh found herself face to face with her first alien. The Cetheri leader's features were surprisingly elegant, crystalline patterns flowing across iridescent skin that seemed to pulse with internal light. But it was the eyes that caught Walsh's attention. 3 of them, arranged in a triangle, filled with an intelligence that transcended species. Unknown vessel, the Cetheri spoke, their words translated by the ship's eye. You respond to our call when none would, but you must leave. The Nox show no mercy to those who interfere. Walsh stepped forward. I'm Commander Raven Walsh of the United Earth ship Hyperion. We're here to help. You do not understand. The Cetheri leader's voice carried an edge of desperation. The Nox believe themselves the only worthy inheritors of the galaxy. They destroy any civilization they deem unnecessary. Your ship cannot stand against them. An explosion bloomed in the distance as another Cetheri platform succumbed to the Nox assault. Walsh's jaw tightened. Maybe not alone. But we're not alone. On cue, space rippled behind the Hyperion as 3 more patrol ships emerged from quantum space. The Athena, the Orion, and the Titan. Not warships, but they carry humanity's determination with them. Commander, Henderson whispered, the Nox ships are altering course. They're moving to engage. Walsh nodded. Good. That means they're not shooting at civilians anymore. She turned back to the view screen. We may not have your advanced technology, but humanity has something the Nox might not expect. We're really good at improvising. The Cetheri leader's expression shifted in a way Walsh couldn't quite read. You would risk your ships, your lives, for strangers. That's kind of our thing, Walsh replied with a slight smile. Now let's talk about getting your people out of here. The bridge erupted into activity as Walsh outlined her plan. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but it played to humanity's strengths. The patrol ships weren't built for direct combat, but they were fast and maneuverable. And their crews were used to thinking on their feet. Athena and Titan, focus on evacuation, Walsh ordered. Your quantum drives can handle short-range transport. Get as many Cethari to safety as you can. Orion, you're with us. We're going to give our friends something else to shoot at. The Nox ships loomed closer, their weapon systems charging. They were massive, easily dwarfing the human vessels, but Walsh had learned long ago that size wasn't everything. They're launching fighters, Dmitri reported. A lot of them. Good, Walsh replied, surprising her crew. That means they're taking us seriously. Priya, broadcast on all frequencies. I want the Nox to hear this. She waited for Priya's nod, then spoke with all the authority she could muster. Attention Nox vessels. This is Commander Walsh of the United Earth Fleet. The Cethari are under our protection. Any further aggression will be met with force. The response came immediately. A barrage of energy weapons that lit up space like artificial lightning. But the Hyperion was already moving, its engines pushing to their limits as it weaved through the assault. They're not used to targets that fight back, Walsh observed as another volley missed them. Dmitri analyzed their attack patterns. Find me a weakness. Henderson, coordinate with Orion. I want synchronized attack runs. Let's show them what humanity can do. As the battle unfolded, Walsh caught glimpses of the evacuation on her tactical display. The Athena and Titan were making progress, their holds filling with Cethari civilians as they made short quantum jumps to safety. But time was running out. Commander, Priya called out, I'm picking up more Nox ships entering the system. 5 minutes until they're in range. Walsh gripped her chair tighter. They couldn't win this fight. Not conventionally. But maybe they didn't have to. Dmitri, remember those experimental quantum mines we were supposed to be testing? A slow smile spread across the tactical officer's face. The ones specifically ordered to remain unused except under controlled conditions. Those would be the ones. How many do we have? Full complement. 30 devices. Walsh allowed herself a small grin. Deploy them in a scatter pattern along the Nox approach vector. Let's see how they handle a little human ingenuity. As the mines moved into position, Walsh watched the tactical display with growing tension. Everything hinged on timing now, and on whether the Nox were as predictable as she hoped they were. The next few minutes would determine not just their survival, but humanity's first real step onto the galactic stage, and Walsh intended to make it count. Shields of humanity. The quantum mines hung invisible against the backdrop of space, waiting. Commander Walsh watched the tactical display as the new Nox vessels approached, their formations tight and disciplined. Too disciplined. Status of the evacuation, Walsh asked, her eyes never leaving the screen. Athena reports 60% of surviving civilians transferred. Henderson replied. Titan is at 75%. They're moving as fast as they can, but the Cethari life support systems are complicated. Each transfer takes time. A blast rocked the Hyperion, sending tremors through the deck plating. The original Nox ships hadn't given up their pursuit, forcing the human vessels to maintain their elaborate dance of evasion. Shields at 40%, Dmitri reported. The Orion's down to 35%. We can't keep this up much longer. Walsh nodded, then opened a channel to the Cethari command station. How much longer do you need? The Cethari leader, who had introduced themselves as first speaker Lyra, appeared on screen. Their crystalline features were strained, internal light pulsing with what Walsh had learned to recognize as anxiety. Our core systems are failing, Lyra responded. The Nox targeted our primary reactors first. Even with your help, we cannot save everyone. That wasn't what I asked, Walsh said firmly. How much longer? Lyra's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. 20 minutes to evacuate the most critical sections. But Commander, you must understand. The Nox will not stop. They never stop. Your ships are already damaged. 20 minutes. Walsh allowed herself a small smile. We can give you 30. She switched channels. Orion, form up on our position. Dimitri, arm the mines. Let's show our visitors some old-fashioned human hospitality. The approaching Nox fleet maintained their perfect formation as they entered the minefield. Walsh waited, counting under her breath. The first ship triggered a proximity sensor. Now, the quantum mines detonated in sequence, not with conventional explosions, but with precisely calculated quantum pulses that disrupted the very fabric of space-time. The Nox ships, so rigid in their formation, suddenly found themselves fighting against localized gravity distortions and temporal eddies. Direct hits on 3 vessels, Dimitri called out. Their shields are fluctuating. Wait, something's happening. The Nox ships began to adapt, their hull plating shifting to compensate for the quantum disruptions. But Walsh had expected this. Initiate Phase 2, she ordered. Execute Maneuver Delta 7. The Hyperion and Orion broke formation, diving between the disoriented Nox vessels. Their smaller size, originally a disadvantage, now proved crucial as they wove through the chaos of their own making. The quantum distortions masked their approach until they were practically on top of the enemy ships. Fire everything we've got, Walsh commanded. Target their adaptive plating. Don't let them stabilize. The human ships unleashed their conventional weapons, railguns, plasma torpedoes, and point defense systems all firing in concert. Against normal shields, it would have been useless. But with their defenses still scrambled by the quantum mines, the Nox vessels took significant damage. Commander, Priya's voice cut through the commotion. I'm picking up something from the Cethery station. They're reactors. They're going critical. Walsh spun toward the main viewport. The central Cethery platform was pulsing with unstable energy, its once elegant structure now riddled with burning breaches. First speaker, Walsh called out. What's happening? Lyra's image flickered on screen, their internal light now erratic. The containment fields are failing. We cannot stop it. The chain reaction will destroy everything within 10,000 kilometers. Walsh's mind raced. The Athena and Titan were still evacuating civilians. The Nox ships, despite their damage, were regrouping. And now they had a ticking time bomb to deal with. Then she saw it. A possibility. Crazy, probably suicide, but possible. First speaker, your reactor design. It uses quantum resonance, doesn't it? Yes, but... And the Nox ships, they're still affected by our mind's quantum disruption field. Lyra's eyes widened as they followed her logic. Commander, you cannot be suggesting. Dimitri, plot a course directly through the Nox fleet. Get me as close to their flagship as possible. Walsh opened a channel to all ships. Athena, Titan, you have 10 minutes to complete evacuation. After that, you jump to safety, no matter what. Orion, cover their retreat. Commander, Henderson stepped closer, his voice low. What exactly are you planning? Walsh's eyes remained fixed on the failing Cethery station. Their reactor's going to blow anyway. Might as well make it count. She turned to her crew. This is volunteer only. Anyone who wants to evacuate, head to the escape pods now. Not a single crew member moved. Well then, Walsh allowed herself a grim smile. Let's give the Nox a lesson in human problem-solving. Engines to full power. Take us in. The Hyperion surged forward, diving toward the heart of the Nox fleet. Behind them, the Cethery station's pulse grew more erratic, building toward an inevitable detonation. But if Walsh was right, if her crazy plan worked, they might just turn this disaster into an advantage. Sometimes, she reflected as they accelerated toward their target, humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their willingness to try the impossible, especially when lives were at stake. The Nox flagship loomed ahead, its weapons charging. Walsh gripped her chair and gave the order that would either save them all or doom them to a spectacular failure. Let's show them what happens when you back humanity into a corner. The bridge between stars. The Hyperion rocketed through space, its engines burning past safety limits as it charged toward the Nox flagship. Energy weapons crisscrossed their path, but Walsh had committed them to this course. Behind them, the Cethary station's reactor continued its cascade toward critical failure. Time to reactor detonation, Walsh demanded, her knuckles white on her chair's armrests. 3 minutes, Dmitri responded, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Nox flagship is attempting to move out of our trajectory. Not happening, Walsh muttered. Priya, open a channel to first speaker Lyra. We need their help for this to work. The Cethary leader appeared on screen, their crystalline features now pulsing with rapid patterns of internal light. Commander, your ship is on a collision course with... No time to explain fully, Walsh cut in. Can you modify your reactor's quantum signature to match the frequency of our minds? Understanding flickered across Lyra's alien features. You intend to create a resonance cascade. The energy release would be unprecedented. But focused, Walsh pressed. If we time it right, we can direct most of the blast toward the Nox fleet. Will it work? A series of rapid calculations scrolled across Lyra's station console. Theoretically, but the precision required. And your ship would need to survive being caught between a quantum detonation and a Nox capital ship. Let us worry about survival, Walsh replied. Just tell me you can do it. Lyra's 3 eyes closed briefly. We can attempt to modulate the reactor frequency. But Commander, why? Why risk everything for us? Walsh allowed herself a small smile. Because that's what humans do. We help. Now, let's make this count. The next 2 minutes were a blur of coordinated chaos. As Lyra's team worked to adjust their failing reactor, the Hyperion's crew prepared for what could be their final maneuver. The Nox flagship loomed larger in their viewport, its weapons now focusing entirely on the approaching human vessel. Reactor modification complete, Lyra reported. You have 40 seconds before detonation. Walsh nodded. Dmitri, transfer all remaining power to forward shields. Henderson, plot us a quantum jump trajectory. Time it exactly with the blast. 1 shot, or we're vapor. Quantum jump. Henderson's eyes widened. That close to a detonation. The calculations alone. Use the blast wave, Walsh instructed. Let it push us into quantum space. We don't need finesse, just survival. The Nox flagship filled their view now, its massive hull bristling with weapons. But they still hadn't realized the true threat. They were too focused on the seemingly suicidal human ship to notice the changing quantum signatures around them. 20 seconds, Dmitri called out. Walsh opened a final channel to all ships. Athena, Titan. Confirm evacuation status. Evacuation complete, came the response. All surviving Cethary civilians secured. We're clear of the blast radius. 10 seconds. Walsh took a deep breath. Lyra, it's been an honor. Crew of the Hyperion, brace for impact. The Cethary station's reactor reached critical mass just as the Hyperion slipped between the Nox flagship's defensive screen. The quantum resonance cascade began as a ripple, then exploded into a wave of pure physics-defying energy. The carefully modulated frequency matched perfectly with the lingering disruption field from the quantum mines, creating a focused cone of destruction. Now, Walsh shouted. The Hyperion's quantum drive engaged at the exact moment the wave hit them. For a fraction of a second, the ship existed in a state of quantum uncertainty, neither here nor there, riding the edge between normal space and something else entirely. The blast wave caught them, and instead of destroying them, it hurled them into quantum space like a cosmic slingshot. The crew experienced a moment of total sensory disconnect as reality itself seemed to bend around them. Then, with a jolt that rattled every bolt and beam, they re-emerged into normal space several light minutes away. Status report. Walsh called out as soon as she could form words again. Shields critical, hull integrity at 40%. Dmitri responded, checking systems. But we're alive. Somehow, the Nox fleet, Walsh asked, still trying to blink away the quantum afterimages. Henderson pulled up the long-range sensors. The flagship and 3 support vessels were caught in the blast. Their adaptive systems couldn't compensate for the quantum cascade. The remaining ships they're retreating. A ragged cheer went up from the bridge crew. Walsh allowed herself to slump slightly in her chair, the adrenaline slowly fading. "Commander," Priya called out, "incoming transmission from the Athena. The Cetheri, they want to talk." The main screen flickered to life, showing First Speaker Lyra aboard one of the evacuation ships. Their crystalline features were now glowing with a steady, warm light. "Commander Walsh," Lyra began, their translated voice carrying new undertones of respect and wonder. "What your people have done today. There are no words in our language to properly express our gratitude." Walsh straightened in her chair despite her exhaustion. "The Nox, retreating beyond the sector boundary," Lyra confirmed. "Their remaining ships received significant damage from the quantum cascade. But more importantly, they now know they are not alone in their technological advancement. They know that humanity, despite being younger, is not to be underestimated." "Let's hope they spread the word," Walsh replied. "Though I have to admit, I'm not looking forward to explaining to Command how we managed to violate about 50 different protocols in one afternoon." Legacy of Hope. 3 weeks after the battle at the Cetheri colony, Commander Walsh stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her formal uniform pressed and perfect. The chamber was silent as the 9 council members reviewed the final report of what was now being called the Carina incident. Admiral Joe, the head of the council, looked up from his datapad. "Commander Walsh, you violated 17 protocols regarding first contact procedures, engaged in unauthorized combat with an unknown species, and utilized experimental weapons without proper clearance." Walsh stood straighter. "Yes, sir." "You also," Zhao continued, his expression unchanging, "saved over 30,000 civilian lives, successfully defended against a hostile force with superior technology, and established first contact with a spacefaring civilization in a way that has led to unprecedented diplomatic opportunities." Through the chamber's vast windows, Walsh could see the Cetheri diplomatic vessel in orbit around Earth. Its organic lines and crystalline structure stood in stark contrast to the angular human ship surrounding it. "The Cetheri High Council has formally requested an alliance with Earth," Councillor Rivera added, leaning forward. "They've offered to share their quantum technology, their medical advancements, their star charts, knowledge that would have taken us centuries to develop on our own." "And the Nox?" Walsh asked, breaking protocol by speaking out of turn. Admiral Zhu's lips twitched slightly. "Intelligence reports suggest they're being considerably more cautious in their expansion efforts. Apparently, the idea that a primitive species could turn their own adaptive technology against them has made them reassess their strategies." Walsh nodded, remembering the sight of the Nox flagship caught in the quantum cascade. Sometimes the best defense was showing potential aggressors that the cost of conflict would be too high. "What happens now, sir?" Zhao stood, and the rest of the council followed suit. "Now, Commander, we adapt. The galaxy knows we're here, and thanks to your actions, they know humanity isn't just another species to be conquered or ignored." He stepped down from the council platform, approaching Walsh directly. "The Hyperion is being repaired and upgraded with Cetheri assistance. Once it's ready, we'd like you to command our first joint mission. The Cetheri have expressed particular interest in having you serve as a liaison between our species." Walsh blinked in surprise. "Sir, there must be more qualified. More qualified than the commander who proved humanity's worth not through force alone, but through our willingness to help others." Zhao shook his head. "The Cetheri chose you, Commander. They say you embody what they admire most about our species, our capacity to rise above protocol when conscience demands it." Later that evening, Walsh stood in the observation lounge of Earth Orbital Station 1, watching the Cetheri ship catch the light of the setting sun. First Speaker Lyra had joined her, their crystalline form refracting the golden light into subtle patterns across the deck. Your council seems concerned about the changes coming to your society, Lyra observed. Walsh nodded. Change isn't easy. Knowing we're not alone, that there are both friends and threats among the stars. It's a lot for people to process. Yet you did not hesitate when you heard our call. Lyra turned their three eyes toward her. Even knowing nothing about us, even at the risk of your own destruction. That's the thing about humans, Walsh replied, smiling slightly. We're curious, sometimes to a fault. But more than that, we understand that the universe is too big, too amazing to face alone. We've always dreamed of reaching the stars, not just to explore them, but to find others who share that dream. Lyra's internal light pulsed warmly. The Nox believes strength comes from superiority, from standing above all others. But today they learned that true strength can come from standing together. Below them, Earth continued its eternal rotation, its continents and oceans painted in twilight hues. Somewhere in the Carina Nebula, the remnants of the Nox fleet carried word of a species that had dared to defy them, not for glory or power, but to protect strangers in need. Commander, Lyra said softly, my people have a saying. The brightest stars are those that shine not for themselves, but for others. Humanity has proven itself to be such a star. Walsh watched as more ships appeared in orbit, vessels from Earth's various nations, come to witness this new chapter in human history. Each one carried crews who had grown up looking at the stars and wondering if they were alone. Now they had their answer, and it was more complex and beautiful than anyone had imagined. We were never supposed to answer your call, Walsh mused. We were supposed to wait, to observe, to follow protocol. But sometimes the right thing and the proper thing aren't the same. And that, Lyra responded, their light pulsing with what Walsh had learned to recognize as joy, is precisely why the galaxy needs humanity. You remind us that compassion is not a weakness, and that rules, while important, should never overshadow conscience. As the sun set on humanity's first day as a recognized galactic civilization, Walsh thought about the message they had sent to the cosmos. Not one of military might or technological advancement, but of a simple truth, that when someone calls for help, humanity answers. They were never supposed to respond, but in doing so, they had shown the galaxy exactly who they were, and perhaps that was the most important first contact of all.